The mind, a twisting maze of morals and choices as its user struggles to find their purpose in this world. This labyrinth only grows larger and more baffling in Night Springs.
You'll never find it. It'll never come to you.
You'll never escape this curse. You'll always be nothing but a plaything.
The hell I will. Do you ever play a game and it feels more than just a game? It's like an experience and one that you'll remember for the rest of your life. That was what happened when I played Alan Wake, a third-person horror game released in 2010 by Remedy Entertainment, the same people behind the amazing Max Payne games and recently Quantum Break and Control. People debate on which of these games is their favorite, but for me, it'll always be Alan Wake. Originally an Xbox 360 and PC exclusive, Alan Wake is now being remastered for Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S, PS4 and PS5, and PC. And to celebrate this, I wanted to talk about Alan Wake as well as its continuation in the form of Alan Wake's American Nightmare, and why the first game in particular means so much to me. So let's delve into the darkness and talk about the near perfection that is Alan Wake. The story of Alan Wake follows a writer named, well, Alan Wake, who ventures to the town of Bright Falls with his wife Alice for a vacation. Upon arriving, Alice pressures Alan into a meltdown trying to fix his writing block, and then she's captured by a mysterious dark force. Alan then wakes up in a crashed car a week later, having written a story that's coming true before his eyes, and with the town slowly being converted into minions of the darkness, he sets out to rescue Alice and destroy the source of the evil while fighting off the Taken. I may be jumping the gun when I'm saying this, but I don't care. Alan Wake's story and storytelling is an absolute masterpiece. It's some of the absolute best storytelling I've ever seen in any piece of media, period, with some of the best characters in any video game I've ever played. Sam Lake wears his influences on his sleeves, mostly the works of Stephen King and Twin Peaks. While the references might be a bit on the nose at times, I personally never minded them. Look, I'm a huge horror buff, and seeing a game absolutely love its influences so much just makes me happy. It just makes me happy. The writing and acting is pretty solid all around, with the highlights being the excellent writing work of Sam Lake and the great performance of Matthew Peretta as Alan. I realize I'm being a bit vague on the rest of the story, but as much as I would love to talk about what goes on near the end, I'm not going to do that. I want you to experience it for yourself. Now, the gameplay in Alan Wake puts an interesting twist on the third-person shooter genre, and even though I called Alan Wake a horror game earlier, I don't think it really fits to call it a horror game in terms of the gameplay. The horror more so comes in with the storytelling and atmosphere, which, on that note, are absolutely amazing, but the actual shooting doesn't really fit what I would call horror. The main mechanic that sets Alan Wake apart from other games of the same genre is that in order to damage the Taken, you need to remove the darkness from them by shining your flashlight at them. Once the darkness has dissolved, so to speak, you can then shoot to kill as you please. Alan is capable of using several weapons ranging from revolvers to hunting rifles to shotguns. You do get a few unique weapons as well, such as a flare gun as well as flares and flashbang grenades, making amazing use of the unique way of damaging the enemies. Across each level, you can also find the pages of Alan's story, which serve as the collectibles of the game. The shooting feels nice and tight, and there's absolutely no weapon in this game that doesn't feel good to use. There's a mechanic of having to rapidly press the reload button to reload faster, which, coupled with the lack of a crosshair substituted with the light from your flashlight, makes gunfights tense and heart-pounding. There's also a dodge move of sorts performed by pressing the sprint button and turning the stick away from the source of danger, and you regenerate health by standing in the light, again, fitting in perfectly with the game's themes. Overall, the gameplay feels incredibly solid, and shooting the Taken at point-blank range after blasting away the darkness never gets old. Now, as for Alan Wake's drawbacks, there's a few I have, and they ultimately don't mean much in the grand scheme of things, but I feel like I should mention them. Regional damage in Alan Wake seems to not exist at all, and I'm not sure if it's just a result of my bad aim or not, but headshots never seem to make a difference. Platforming, as little as there is a bit clunky as well, and the jumps are a bit awkward. Finally, and I guess this might be a bit of a personal thing, but I hate most of the sections that throw large objects at you because trying to dodge them can be a bit difficult. But that's really all I can think of. Alan Wake, in short, is an absolute masterpiece of a game, and it really does make me happy every time I play it. Despite the premise and the setting, it really does bring joy to my heart and a tear to my eye whenever I journey back to Bright Falls and step into Alan's shoes again. Despite the fact that this game is amazing as it is, though, I feel it got massively overshadowed by a certain other game that released around the same time that kind of screwed it over. Despite this, it has gained a significant following over the years, enough to warrant its remaster, as well as a small sort of spin-off / continuation in the form of Alan Wake's American Nightmare. Released in 2012 for Xbox Live Arcade and PC, American Nightmare isn't exactly a direct sequel to Alan Wake, but it is another story which follows Alan trying to stop the Dark Presence. This time, an evil embodiment of the darkness has materialized itself to look like Alan, calling himself Mr. Scratch. The whole game follows Alan Wake going through an episode of the Night Springs TV show that was featured in the main game, where he has to make sure certain events take place to where he can change reality and defeat Mr. Scratch. Gameplay is pretty similar to Alan Wake, but is definitely more action-focused with a lot less horror and a lot more shooting. The gameplay revolves around going to various hub areas and making sure events play out in a specific way so that Alan can rewrite reality to suit his needs. The minions of the darkness are here to ruin Alan's day again, but this time there's even more of them, and there's also a greater variety of weapons to play around with, most of them pretty much ripped straight from Max Payne, such as the SMG, the sawed-off shotgun, and the 9mm pistol. Pretty much all the weapons are satisfying as hell to use, but for some reason I still prefer the original game's combat just a little bit more, mostly because the combat was a lot more tense with the atmosphere doing the work and not the enemy count, which is mostly what American Nightmare does. I also noticed that simply shining the light at your enemies doesn't damage the darkness anymore. You have to actually aim at them to damage their darkness shields or whatever, or use the flares or flashbangs. I also have to talk about Mr. Scratch because, oh my god, I feel like he's the main reason I can recommend this game. Played by Peretta, once again returning to voice Alan, he's such a cocky asshole that you can't help but love to hate him. He's easily the best part of American Nightmare on the whole, and if I could give you any reason to play this game, it would be to witness his madness. My main issue with American Nightmare comes from one teensy tiny problem. The game reuses the same 3 environments for the entire time. Now, I will concede that there are a few times where the environments in the original game look somewhat similar, and in the DLC chapters, there were a few areas pretty much just ripped straight from the base game. But for the most part, the environments were always unique enough to the point that it made whatever you were doing feel unique as well. Due to the premise of American Nightmare, however, that isn't the case. The environments and objectives are recycled over and over again, and despite the fact that the enemies and order in which you do things change, the levels all pretty much feel the exact same. Even with my complaints, though, American Nightmare is still a fantastic game, and it's so far the conclusion to Alan's story, aside from the DLC chapters in Control. Despite this, Alan Wake has remained a character that's stuck with me for many, many years now, and it's a game I go back to every now and then just to experience that amazing world. My only hope is that with Alan Wake Remastered, it'll sell well and Remedy will see the appeal this franchise has and be able to bring us a proper Alan Wake 2. Until then, the game will definitely satisfy that horror-loving hole in my heart.